What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guys, Derek and Cody, with you as always. And guys, we wanted to talk about this because, the Colts Nation is so divided right now, and everyone's talking about Anthony Richardson and talking about Joe Flacco and talking about Chris Ballard and saying how terrible this Indianapolis Colts team is. But I think one thing that is standing out is, well, we're going to talk about it here in a second. But before we do that, guys, again, just want to say this episode is presented by Prize Picks. Be sure to download the app today and use the code JUICE to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. But guys, on to the point of this video, the Indianapolis Colts right now, as it stands, have a winning record. And they sit at 4-3 through their first 7 games. And despite all the struggles, the Indianapolis Colts, as it currently sits, is the 6th seed in the playoff picture right now, which is crazy to think about. And the only team that's above them in the wild card is the Steelers, who, again, we beat the Steelers just a few weeks ago. So there's opportunities here, Cody, and I'm certainly not sitting here saying that the Indianapolis Colts are going to make the playoffs. I'm not insinuating that. But I think we have gotten too high-strung over the fact that we're talking about Anthony Richardson and Joe Flacco as if there's some kind of quarterback controversy when we're ignoring the concept that the Colts are actually plus 500 in the record books, and it seems like nobody's talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And I will preface it by saying, let's be honest, look at the competition. The Colts have not necessarily played these great teams as of recent. I mean, let's not pretend they have. But
Right.
Again, Derek, winning is hard in this league. And a lot of people just like to brush it off and say, well, you didn't win by double digits. So, against a team that's not that great. And so they kind of just brush it off. And it's almost like, and I understand why in certain ways, but also it's like, hey, look, at the end of the day, you're post 500, which is definitely important. You're 4-3 through 7 weeks. Look at all the injuries you've sustained so far. I mean, Derek, you're basically doing it with, without your starting running back the last couple weeks, without your best defensive lineman as of recent, without your presumed number one outside corner. He's out for the year. And a lot of other injuries as well that I'm not even mentioning. But you're doing all that. And yes, they're not the prettiest wins in the world. Don't get me wrong. The Miami game, we know very well, wasn't a pretty game. I mean, no doubt about that. But Derek, the fact is, like you said, the Colts are 4-3 heading into a pivotal matchup against the Houston Texans where, if the Colts are able to somehow take care of business here, I mean, the Colts are right there tied for first in the division. As crazy as it sounds and how frustrating it's been this year, that's the reality the Colts find themselves in. They're in a position right now to still seriously compete for the AFC South through 7 weeks. And again, it hasn't been pretty at times. There's been a lot of frustrating moments. But Derek, I mean, at the end of the day, with all the injuries and all this other stuff, and also your young quarterback, not necessarily anywhere close to where he needs to be throwing the football. I mean, I think right now, like, as much as it's tough, there are a lot of good things that this team is doing. There are a lot of positive things, right? It's not all doom and gloom all the time, right? Are there issues with this team? Absolutely. No doubt. But Derek, there's also some positive things that I think we need to highlight as well. And positive things in terms of some players coming back potentially, and also just some units that are playing pretty well that maybe we didn't even expect to play well, and some we did. So, yeah, I think there is some things. It's been a lot of negativity, really, in the Colts circles as of recent. But, let's talk about some positive things because it seems like it's always the negative right now for whatever reason. So I'm all for talking about some good things because there are a lot of good things right now.
Some Positivity Tuesday is what we're going to call it. Positivity Tuesday. Maybe that's a new segment. Maybe we can get that going. And, in the last 5 weeks, I mean, again, all of the Colts' four wins this year have come off of the last 5 games. The only loss we've had against Jacksonville in Jacksonville. We predicted it, but every game since then, the Indianapolis Colts have won. And, of course, like you said, the Bears we beat them before they started getting into a better swing of things. I get that. You obviously, I mean, you played against the Steelers. Now, albeit, we saw what they look like against the Jets with Russell Wilson. But let's not act like as if the Pittsburgh Steelers were a bad team before Russell Wilson got there. They were 4-2 going into that matchup, and one of their only 2 losses on the year was us. Okay, so we beat a high quality team there, and like you said, Titans. It is what it is. But here's something interesting, Cody, that I wanted to share with you. I gotta find it, but somebody talked about like when it comes to overall facing the best defenses that the NFL has to offer this year. As it currently stands, Cody, they said if you took all 17 opponents that the Indianapolis Colts either have faced or will face this year, 14 of those 17 opponents have a top half defense in the NFL in some way, shape, or form. We just saw last week against Miami. Again, say what you will about Chicago, they got a top 10 defense all around. You talk about the Titans. They got potentially the best overall defense on that team right now. Talk about this last game against Miami. Again, say whatever you will about their offense. We totally understand that. But their defense was the number 1 pass defense in the NFL, albeit they were missing one or two important guys on their defense. But then again, so are we. Like, that is a common trend that the Colts are going to be facing this year. They're facing a lot of teams with some good defenses. We already have faced some teams with some really good defenses. And, we were a few plays away from beating the Houston Texans week 1. And, obviously the Jacksonville game is cursed. We know it. It's always a loss every year. We can just
you should have won that game too. Like you were in
every
position.
Game you played in this year, you should have won.
That's what I'm saying. Like this team has been in every single loss, every single game they have been in. So yeah, I mean, I think that this team has not gotten blown out. Again, they haven't Houston's probably the team you say, right now where they were week 1, they're probably the best team you've played overall, right? Green Bay might have contended if they had Jordan Love. But again, you face some teams, you face some bad teams, but you've also faced some teams that are going to be right in the playoff, push for the AFC or NFC already, Derek. And, obviously you haven't won all of them, but you've been in every single one. So I think that's definitely a factor as well, is the fact that you did that. And, one other thing, Derek, a lot of people hate, and I understand why to a degree, you hate the ugly wins, right? You don't like those ugly wins against teams, but I mean, Derek, let's be honest. How many years have you let last year the Bengals with Jake Browning do what they did against you? How many years have you let, teams that have these backup quarterbacks beat you? How many times have the Colts done that? I feel like the games they should have won sometimes, they let it slip through their fingers in those tightly contested games like that. They don't finish, right? And so say what you want about this team, but, in the game against Miami, they did finish. And that's not something to just be completely throwing it out the window. I think that is definitely something that is worth something, considering the fact that you played like garbage for a good chunk of the game on offense. You have your young quarterback who's learning. We all knew that, yet you still were able to win when it mattered. And your quarterback was able to make the plays when it mattered, despite having a bad day. So I think that tells me, Derek, that, the Colts right now, I think we would both say, even healthy, I don't think it's a playoff, or I don't think it's a Super Bowl caliber team. I mean, I think we can probably say that pretty confidently right now. I don't even know if it's a playoff team at this point. But so far, through 7 games, the injuries and, where you've been at, you feel like the play calling hasn't necessarily been up to snuff. The run defense is awful, yet here you are, Derek, still having an opportunity to be in every single game and being competitive and closing out games that, frankly, you would have lost a year ago. Now, you point to the Jacksonville game, didn't close that one out, so there's still an issue there. But you're doing some things that, Derek, the last 4 or 5 years the Colts wouldn't have done, And that's something I think that's at least worth talking about, because they've so many times, played down to their competition. Games that they should have won, they end up losing somehow, against the Tyler Huntley's of the world or Brock Osweiler's of the world or whoever you want to throw in there. Jake Browning last year, I mentioned already. Like, you know what I mean? Like the Colts have lost those games before. But I guess I just look at that game and I'm like, it was an ugly game against the Miami Dolphins. It wasn't the prettiest game against a team like Chicago. It wasn't the prettiest game against, throw in another team. I don't even know at this point, like so many against the Titans, but you won. I mean, and again, 4-3. Not the greatest record in the world, but it's a winning record through 7 weeks. So I don't know. That's kind of where I sit with it is like this team has a bunch of issues. We're not going to deny that. But they've also won 4 games despite all of these things going against them. So I'll take that.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they are in this space despite, obviously, like you said, just your quarterbacks having to go back and forth a little bit, your running back getting injured for several weeks. You've had an array of new offensive weapons to have to try to get into the scheme. And then your defense just getting decimated, over half your starters, and not just your starters, but, role guys as well, either being cut or also getting injured. I mean, again, it's just one of those situations. Now, again, if we were one of those teams that didn't have quite the injury bug as some other teams did, maybe there is a little bit of a different scenario. I don't know, but I doubt that we are in a situation where if we had the majority of our guys playing for the majority of the year, that our defense would all of a sudden be a top 15 unit in the league and our offense would still be a top 15 unit either. So like it's kind of one of those situations where, again, one thing I don't think we've given credit to is, once again, head coach Shane Steichen. I think that is another one here. We have, even you and I have sat on this and we have said that we haven't really loved the game planning for Shane Steichen this year, particularly just like the passing concepts a lot of times just have made no sense. And, we've said it. And, it's different for Shane Steichen because I think a lot of us are just like, oh, why can't you just do in Philly what you're doing now? Like all the time. Because he has a million more responsibilities now than what he did in Philadelphia. He had one responsibility: draw up a game plan that worked for the Eagles. That was his only goal. His only job in life was to do that. And now you got to manage the clock. You got to manage both sides of the ball. You got to manage your personnel. You got to manage all of these other things on top of trying to put together a game plan with your OC that you have now. So it is a little bit different. And he's already admitted that, hey, I haven't done a good enough job of doing the things that I need to do to make sure that Anthony Richardson and company are in a better spot. But Cody, after the games, when you hear him talk to the team, I mean, you can tell that these guys are buying into what he's building. And that was a huge stepping stone from what this team was at the end of the 2022 season with the previous regime. They had given up. This is not a team that gives up. This is a team that is decimated. This is a team that is inexperienced at times in some of the key positions, and yet still grinds out wins regardless of who the opponent is. They certainly try their hardest to be able to handle it. And Steichen said it best, man. You'll never be perfect. Perfection is something that you can never chase down. But if you chase perfection, you will achieve excellence. That is a beautiful quote, and that's what this team is trying to do right now. They really are buying into Steichen, and this team fights hard, regardless of if they're the most talented, if they're the most prepared, if they're the most gifted. It doesn't really matter. They just try to win games, and even with everything else going on, and I know we're about to hit a really tough stretch coming up, but this is what you need in the team. You need guys that are buying into what you're doing to be able to try to break the hump. And for everything that Shane Steichen has had to deal with through his first year and a half as this coach of this team, I'd say he's doing a pretty dang good job.
Well, guys, with football season finally getting back into the swing of things, first off, we rejoice. But also, guys, when it comes to prize picks, this is going to be a great way for you guys, especially, to check out some of the stuff that prize picks has.
You can now win up to 100 times your money on prize picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You heard me right. Only 4 correct picks. You can win 100 times your money, guys, on prize picks. Be sure to sign up today and get $50 off instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed.
So if you're looking specifically for the Colts stuff, that's definitely something you guys should check out. But if you're looking for, like me, more NFL stuff, there's all sorts of stats and stuff that you can check out and make your picks. And there's definitely guys that are very consistent, like Jonathan Taylor against the Houston Texans, that you really feel like you can probably feel pretty good about overall, right? And there's some other ones where you're like, I don't know if I would take the over on that. I don't know if I would pick them to hit that margin, right? So guys, be sure to go check out all that stuff on Prize Picks. It's only a couple examples. There's all the different odds that you could hope for when it comes to that for Prize Picks. So I highly encourage you guys to go check that out, but definitely excited for this season. And hopefully you guys will be following along with us and everything with Prize Picks and what they do.
So be sure to download the app today. Use the code JUICE to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code JUICE to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Like I said, guys, it's a great way to continue to stay in with week to week life of the NFL, specifically with your favorite team, the Indianapolis Colts. So be sure to do that. Be sure to check out Prize Picks. And remember, Prize Picks, run your game.
Yeah, I mean, say what you want about the play calling and all that stuff, like you mentioned. I mean, I think he's taken a step back in that department so far through 7 games. But yeah, no doubt this team fights hard and this team doesn't quit, which is definitely a big thing, despite the fact that there is a lot of youth and inexperience, especially, on that defensive side of things in certain areas. I mean, right now, Derek, like your defensive line specifically, there's a lot of youth. I mean, really outside of what? Grover Stewart at this point, it's just a lot of young guys. It's just a lot of young guys having to step up and, do some stuff. And, that's kind of been the issue with this team. We already know the youth in the secondary. There's youth a little bit of everywhere on this roster, especially on the defensive side of things. But and while it hasn't been perfect, I mean, while this defense has certainly had their issues, while this offense has certainly had their issues, I mean, just sometimes getting these wins can do just world of difference and make a world of difference for this young team. I mean, just learning how to win, even if it's not always the prettiest. I think that goes a long way, man, for this team, is especially for a young team like that, for a young quarterback, for a young secondary, for a lot of these guys that are, on their first contracts with Indianapolis. I mean, I think it goes a long way. So, yeah, man, I'm definitely, like you said, it's definitely going to be a tough stretch coming up. I mean, this was kind of the cupcake part of your schedule, if you will. And now it's getting a lot tougher. It's getting a lot tougher. You're going to have to face some legitimate AFC and NFC powerhouses here in the next number of weeks. And it's going to be very telling, Derek, when we come back in, say, a month and see where this team sits. Right now, winning record, are they going to have that winning record when, it's all said and done? I'm not sure. But, even in some of these games, Derek, I'm like, I just want to see, is this team giving themselves opportunities to win these games? Whether they win them all or not, I don't know. These teams are tough. It's going to be tough. But I just want to see this team show enough positive signs that make you encouraged about where this team is going moving forward. And, whether this team, finishes with 12 wins, whether this team finishes with 8 wins, I don't know exactly where the case is going to be, where this team's going to go. But I just think there's a lot of positive things, while definitely some negative things as well. It feels like this team is gaining some confidence right now in themselves, and also getting some key players back, which I think will definitely help. If you get Jonathan Taylor back this week, if you get DeForest Buckner back this week, if you get EJ Speed back this week, I mean, those are 3 key players right there that could do worlds of wonder for your team. And, maybe get a couple other guys back. Who knows? But it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens with that, Derek, for this team. But yeah, like you said, there's a lot of negative around the Colts right now, but I think there are some positive things. I mean, you can point to this young secondary right now. Derek, this secondary has some nice young pieces in it. It really does.
Yep.
It's certainly not perfect. We know that very well. And it's going to certainly be tested in these next number of weeks.
Oh, yeah.
But there's some things to build off of. You know, some of these young guys, they're performing right now for the Indianapolis Colts, and especially on the defensive side of things. I mean, we know what Lachu's been able to do, even though the sack numbers haven't always been there. I mean, he feels like he's been consistently getting after the quarterback, even if he only has 2 sacks. And, you know, you talk about, you know, a guy like Jalen Carlisle. Hopefully he doesn't miss too much time, but he's been really good in coverage, especially. You know, we obviously know what Jalen Jones has done this year. I feel like he's been a better corner than a lot of us are talking about.
Yep.
I think he's just become so much smarter this year in just situational awareness this year for the Colts. And I feel like, you know, after up and down rookie season and kind of an up and down start to the year, I feel like he's kind of settling in a little bit. Same with obviously Samuel Womack, who I think has just played exceptional for you. And obviously Kenny Moore, who was, I believe, your highest graded player, according to PFF, coming out of that week. So definitely encouraging, man, for the Indianapolis Colts. Looking at this defense in general, looking at this team in general, is like, look, we never expected this team to seriously compete for a Super Bowl this year. I don't think we did, especially after seeing, you know, where some of these
After the
first
roster, 2 weeks, I think most people had given up on
right.
this.
Well, I mean, let's be honest, there are parts of this roster that at that point in time, and even still, are kind of in the developmental phase. Like, there's your quarterback's the most obvious one, but, you know, the secondary was still very much early on in that developmental phase. You know, we made a video saying, man, Chris Ballard's failed at this secondary because it was just like, man, you just had no depth. And got lucky with Samuel Womack playing as well as he has. That's kind of helped shore things up there. But yeah, man, I mean, there's some things that are still figuring it out. There are some really good pieces for this team. I didn't even mention Tanner Bortolini, who's been phenomenal at center when he's been able to play, filling in for Ryan Kelly. So a lot of these rookies, Derek, have actually been playing fairly well for this team. And then you have guys obviously like Josh Downs, who we love Josh Downs, what he's done. You know, Alec Pierce when he's gotten opportunities. And I feel like guys like I said, Bortolini, Dalton Tucker having to step up in bigger roles. 2 young guys there, 2 rookies having to step up. I mean, a lot of your young guys are having to step up and make plays. And yes, it hasn't been perfect, but they've done that.
Yep, absolutely, man. I mean, again, say what you will. I mean, this is still a 4-3 team that has yet to even come close to playing their best football. I mean, and that's also what's crazy about it, Cody. Because this team hasn't even been close to competing seriously against anyone, and yet here we are, still at 4-3. I mean, obviously, like you said, we're going to get insanely tested this next month and a half with some of the games that we're going to have to face, but again, I'll take my chances. You know, I like what I'm seeing, and you know, I mean, it's painful to watch at times. It is as passionate of fans as we are, but nevertheless, man, this team still has something in it, and you know, I'm a fan through and through. I want to see this team succeed. And I certainly want to see this team succeed with Anthony Richardson behind center, and I want to see him continue to progress. I just want to see this team progress and get better, as you said, in some key units to be able to, you know, who knows, maybe in late December time, some of those week 16, 17, 18 matchups might actually mean something. Who knows? I don't know how this team's going to look over this next 5-game stretch, but I will say this: if you can win at least 2 of them, give yourself a chance, and anything can happen.
Exactly. And like we said, Colts are going to be getting back some of their players, you know, in the next couple weeks. Hopefully Taylor for sure, maybe Buckner this week, which would obviously be huge on that defensive line.
Yeah.
Maybe help shore up that run game a little bit more, which has just been terrible this year. I mean, we've talked about that. And potentially getting Tyquan Lewis back at some point here in the next couple weeks would definitely be big as well. Obviously, Derek, we know he went out in that Pittsburgh game, so he's still got a couple more weeks, I believe, till he's, you know, has that practice window open for him to come back. And you never know on Samson Ebukam. I mean, we haven't even talked about him, but Colts haven't placed him on IR yet.
Yeah,
so I'm not
season-ending
sure.
IR, yeah.
Yeah, season ending. Yeah. So who knows, man? At this point, like you said, in December time, if you get back getting a little bit healthier, some of these young players, specifically your young quarterback, grows a little bit and is a little bit better than he is right now. Who knows where this team could go, man? You have no idea right now. But again, next number of weeks, going to be a big test for this team. I could see it going multiple ways, dude. I could see this team pulling out some victories that nobody thought, or I could see this team losing to some really good football teams. But I'll just be interested to see kind of how they handle themselves against some of the teams that people would say are some of the elite when it comes to the NFL. So it'll be interesting to see that, man.
Yep, absolutely. Well, that's going to do it for this one, guys. Again, let us know your thoughts on this team and where it stands right now. And do you have to take a second to think back at the fact that we have a winning record through the first 7 games, or does it really not matter to you? But that's going to do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, go Colts.